buenos dias, Pastor Junior. Yeah, we got a little bit of drizzle this morning. So I'm like, man, I'm not sure if I should take my ride out. but anyways, so I woke up, actually yesterday I was taking my walk and I was thinking of what to share. But I ran into a sister, unhoused sister, right? In the calle, which she kind of like motivated me in a sense of Psalm 23, Psalm 73:25, que dice, mira lo que dice. Psalm 73 says, "Whom do I have in heaven besides you?" And then the psalmist says, "And there's no one on earth whom I desire besides you." Right? The psalmist is here in Psalm 73:25. Psalm 73 is a psalm of Asaph, right? ¿Qué es un psalm? Pues a psalm is a hymn. It's a poem, and it could even be a prayer, right? Once again, what is a psalm? A psalm is a prayer, a psalm is a hymn, and a psalm is a poem, right? Because once again, you have the Psalm of Moses. The Psalm of Moses is the prayer of Moses. If you guys look up Psalm chapter 90, that was the psalmist there is Moses, right? Pues que es un psalmist. Wow, a psalmist is one who writes psalms, right? And Moses wrote Psalm chapter 90. Okay, it's titled the prayer of Moses. So a psalm can be a prayer, a psalm can be a hymn, right? Because most of the psalms that are written by David and Asaph were to be sung in the temple for worship. But here in Psalm 73, right? So we have Psalm 73, we have Asaph. ¿Y quién es Asaph? Well, Asaph was David's music man. He was a prophet, and he was also a minister, right? But he's writing right here in Psalm 73. So homeboy's looking at the prosperity of the wicked, and he's envying the prosperity of the wicked, right? But then it says when he goes into the temple of God, he realized that God is the ultimate source. God is the ultimate treasure over what? Over worldly desires. But right here in Psalm 73, verse 25, he says this. He says, "Whom do I have in heaven besides you? And there's no one on earth whom I desire besides you," right? So he says that. It says, well, here's my title, right? God, the ultimate treasure, surpassing what? All earthly desires, right? Once again, God, the ultimate source, surpassing all earthly desires, right? A spiritual shift from envying the wicked to finding what? To finding contentment and strength in God's presence over even when human strength fails. Even when human strength fails, right? The frustration in seeing the wicked prosper while the righteous suffer. In seeing the wicked prosper, right, while the righteous suffer. You know, at the beginning, when I started seeking the Lord and following the Lord, me too, man. I was like, wait a minute, Lord, here I am serving you, and I get this. but and we're seeing the wicked prosper, man. And while I get this. I don't know where you're at in your life, in your spiritual walk, but the beginning of my spiritual walk, I saw the same thing, man. I go, here I am serving your Lord, and I get this. But once again, a spiritual shift from envying the wicked to finding contentment and strength in God's presence over human. I mean, God's presence, even when human strength fails, right? The frustration of seeing the wicked prosper, right? But here's the revelation. After entering God's sanctuary, the psalmist realizes that the true security and fulfillment are found only in God and not in material success. Right? Ahí te va otra vez. It says, after entering the sanctuary, the psalmist realizes that the true security and fulfillment are found only in God and not material success. Right? The psalmist Asaph declares, right? Here's the vow, right? How many of us have made a vow? Well, the psalmist here is making the vow, right? The psalmist Asaph declares that nothing on earth or in heaven is desired more than God. Right? The psalmist Asaph declares that nothing on earth or in heaven is desired more than God. Is desired more than God. And here's another thing we learn. Prioritizing, right? Prioritizing spiritual intimacy. Prioritizing spiritual intimacy with God over worldly pursuits. Right? Prioritizing spiritual intimacy with God over worldly pursuits, right? Because we can pursue those worldly pursuits, right? Transitioning from desiring the person to desiring the God who holds them, right? Because once again, the psalmist here says again, he says, "Whom do I have in heaven? Whom do I have in heaven besides you?" You might have loved to love a loved one, right? I lost my sister. I lost my brother. Some of you might have lost your father and your mother, or your aunt, your uncle, your grandpa, your grandma, whoever, was close to you. Maybe you lost a son or a daughter whom you hold dearly, right? But notice the psalmist here. What we learn here is transitioning from desiring the person to desiring the God who holds them. God holds your loved one. God holds your loved one. That's to give you comfort and peace, knowing that God holds your loved one. If you lost somebody like that close, right? You might even lost your wife, your husband, right? But God is the one that holds them. So we should desire God above them, because God is the one that's holding them, right? Transitioning from desiring the person to desiring the God who holds them, right? To recognize heaven, the true value. Recognizing heaven as the true value, right? It's found in reminding yourself that the best part of heaven is not reunion with the loved one, but experiencing the presence of God Himself. Right? To recognize heaven's true value, right? It's to remind yourself that the best part of heaven is not reunion with our loved ones, right? But the experience of the presence of God Himself. Once again, whom do I have in heaven besides you? And there's one on earth whom I desire besides you, right? God, the ultimate true, the ultimate source, surpassing all earthly desires. God, the ultimate treasure. God is the ultimate treasure, surpassing all earthly desires. Well, I don't know. I pray that this word has brought you peace and comfort, right? Not to, not to envy the wicked, right? But to find your true treasures in God Himself and not earthly pursuits. Amen. Orale. Just a word of encouragement. God bless you guys.